סוף 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 חנוכה הוא חג טוב, חנוכה הוא חג טוב, סביבון סוף 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 חג שמחה הוא לעם, נס גדול היה שם, נס גדול היה שם, חג שמחה הוא לעם. Hanukkah linda está aquí, 8 candelas para mí. Hanukkah linda está aquí, 8 candelas para mí. Oh, una candelica, 2 candelicas, 3 candelicas, 4 candelicas, 5 candelicas, 6 candelicas, 7 candelicas. 8 candelas para mí, 8 candelas para mí. I flip my lockers in the air sometimes, saying hey-oh, spin the dreidel. Just wanna celebrate for all 8 nights, singing hey-oh, light the candle. We say ma'osu, oh yeah, for all 8 nights. Then we play dreidel by the candlelight. And I told you once, now I told you twice, about the miracle of the candlelight. Chanukah, oh Chanukah, come light the menorah. Let's have a party, we'll all dance the hora. Gather round the table, we'll give you a treat. Sivivon to play with and latkes to eat. And while we are playing, the candles are burning low. One for each night they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. One for each night they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. So put on your yarmulke, it's time to celebrate Hanukkah. I hope I'll get a harmonica on this lovely, lovely Hanukkah. So drink your gin and tonica, but don't sing Manish Tanaka. If you really, really wanna come, have a happy, 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 happy Hanukkah.
Shalom, friends. I am Pastor Susan John from Kehilat Bethlechem Messianic Synagogue here in Hyderabad, India, and we welcome you to our Chanukah Special series, where we are going to help you learn about the special festival called Hanukkah, why believers in Messiah Yeshua need to know about it, and also we're going to help you learn how to celebrate it if you've never done it before. Hanukkah begins this evening at sundown and is an 8-day festival of celebration, remembrance, and most of all, is a time to do exactly what the word Hanukkah means. The word Hanukkah means dedication, and it's found in several scriptures in the Bible. The word Hanukkah is found from the beginning of the Bible all the way till the end of the Bible. And we will be helping you go through these scriptures in later episodes of the Hanukkah series. So the celebration of Hanukkah is about dedication. Before we get into more details about the celebration, first I would like to talk about why believers in Yeshua, the Messiah, should be celebrating Hanukkah even at this time. One of the reasons is that Hanukkah is actually found in the Gospels. In John chapter 10, verses 22 to 23, we see that Yeshua was in the temple on the Feast of Dedication. And you might wonder, what is the Feast of Dedication? Well, the Feast of Dedication is actually Hanukkah. So it would have been better if it was written that Yeshua was in the temple during Hanukkah. Most of Yeshua's life, we find him traveling around in the Galilee with his disciples. So it's quite significant that apart from the 3 pilgrimage festivals that Yeshua, like the other Jews, would have been in Jerusalem, that is for Pesach or Passover, Shavuot or Pentecost, and even Sukkot, we find John telling us that in the festival of Hanukkah, Yeshua was in the temple. But apart from celebrating Hanukkah, he also talked about Hanukkah. And we find this account in Mark 13, verses 13 to 16, and Matthew 24, verses 15 to 18. In these scriptures, Yeshua warns his disciples that the things that happened during Hanukkah, the historical account of Hanukkah, would actually happen again. So when you go through Matthew 24, verse 15 to 18, what he was talking to the disciples about the persecution that was coming and the wars and rumors of wars, the disciples knew that Yeshua was talking about Hanukkah. So in talking about Hanukkah happening again, I think it's important for us as believers to realize that Yeshua told us that people of God must expect persecution. Hanukkah is actually about the persecution against practicing our biblical faith. So as disciples of Yeshua, we need to be prepared, like Yeshua reminded us, that in times of darkness, we need to be expecting persecution against our faith. And so we must learn how to be prepared. And prepared for what? Prepared to know how to stand firm in our faith. One of the other reasons that as disciples of Yeshua, we should be celebrating Hanukkah is that the word Hanukkah means dedication. So we see in the scriptures that the temple of God was dedicated, and we ourselves are temples of the Holy Spirit. Not only me, myself, as an individual, and you yourself as an individual is the temple of God, but even all of us within the body as we unite under one head, Messiah the Yeshua the Messiah, we all are also the temple of God. And so this is a good time for us to re-examine our life and rededicate our life to God. But the most beautiful reason that you and I as believers need to be celebrating Hanukkah is actually the festival of the light of the world. This is a festival that celebrates the light of the world. And who is the light of the world? Yeshua is the light of the world. Yeshua said, I am the light of the world, and we will never be in darkness if we follow him. So if you and I, who follow Yeshua the Messiah, and we believe in God, then we should be celebrating this festival of Hanukkah as it is a festival of the light of the world. And Yeshua also told his disciples that you are the light of the world. So what he's telling us is that he is the light of the world, and we are also called to be a light in this world. So if that's not enough reason for you and I as believers in the Messiah to be knowing what this festival is about and how this festival directs us to look towards the light of the world, I would think that this is probably one of the most incredible festivals that is returning back to the believers of the Gospels. If you love God like you and me are so thankful for Yeshua the Messiah, then we need to be celebrating the light of the world and Yeshua, who is the hope of the world. Hanukkah is actually a public festival. We light the Hanukkah, which I will be showing you how to light the Hanukkah for Hanukkah, is actually lit in public places so the whole world can get to see the light. So right after sundown, wherever you are in the world, tonight begins the first day of Hanukkah, And what we're going to do by lighting these Hanukkah lights is declaring to the whole world that Yeshua is the light of the world. Before I get into explaining about the Hanukkah and how to light the candles and actually celebrate Hanukkah, I thought it's really important on the first day of Hanukkah to give you a short, quick run through the historical account of Hanukkah. Now, the whole account of Hanukkah is found in the book of Maccabees. We're going to go through a brief snapshot, but you could read the whole book of 1st and 2nd Maccabees and get the whole story. You can go online and you can read it. It's quite a long read, but it is an amazing read. It is an amazing account of bravery and dedication to God. So I really recommend that you take these days of Hanukkah to go through the 1st and 2nd book of Maccabees if you've never read it before, and you will get a very detailed account of what happened. The story in a nutshell I would like to share tonight is it begins with a very famous figure in history called Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great had probably one of the most powerful armies in the world, and he conquered lands and formed an amazingly powerful Greek empire. But after he died, his kingdom began to divide. But by then, a lot of the Greek philosophy had overtaken the lands that he conquered. The Greek language, the Greek thought, its customs, its philosophy, even Greek education became a standard. So you had Greek art, science, athletics, literature, and even religion that was very attractive. One of the lands that was conquered to become part of the Greek Empire was the land of Israel. And the Jews also fell under this way of Hellenism, and they embraced the Greek worldview over the Torah. What does that mean? It means instead of Torah, they embraced philosophy. Instead of the mitzvot, they embraced virtues and aesthetics. Instead of revelation of God, they embraced a life of reasoning. And instead of the worship of one God, they also embraced the gods of Olympus. The Hanukkah story begins actually in 175 BCE, after the Greek Empire was divided, when Antiochus IV inherited the Seleucid throne. And he declared himself as Antiochus Epiphanes, which means the divine. So Antiochus actually believed that he was God. But however, people behind his back called him Antiochus Epimanes, that is Antiochus the madman, and he so proved to be. He was more vigorous about his Greek philosophy, and he ordered all of his subjects to actually worship idols of himself. When he was trying to conquer over the Egyptian land, he failed. And because of this military disaster, he was returning up north, and on his journey, he passed through the land of Israel. In his anger and his frustration that he lost the war over Egypt, he came through Jerusalem and he slaughtered thousands of the Jewish people. During this time, he entered the Holy Temple and he stole the gold and the silver, including the incense altar, the table, and the menorah. He outlawed all of the biblical faith and its practices. He outlawed anything concerning the Torah. The daily sacrifices stopped. The Jerusalem temple was converted into a temple for Zeus. And Antiochus also ordered the forbidding of circumcision, Shabbat observance, kosher diets, and even studying Torah. If you go through the book of Maccabees, there is record of how any Torah scrolls were found and torn up. If anybody was found with the scroll of the covenant, if anybody was found observing the Torah, he was condemned to death by royal decree. So no one in the land of Israel was allowed to keep their faith, and if they did, they would surely die. In Daniel chapter 11:32, it says, "The people who know their God will display strength and take action." Even though many Jews complied by the laws because they didn't want to lose their lives, so to save their lives, they actually forsook the Torah. There were many who chose not to, and they stood firm to the covenant. There are many stories in Jewish literature about brave men and women who resisted Antiochus' laws, and they also suffered death. You could go through this on your own. There's a story of Eliezer who chose to die rather than eat pork. That's in the book of 2nd Maccabees. There is a heart-rending story of Hannah and her 7 sons. And each of these 7 sons were martyred before her eyes because they refused to forsake Torah. And a very famous story of Judith, who actually pretended to seduce an army general, and by doing so, she saved an entire town. They are very heroic stories, and these are beautiful stories to read in the 1st and 2nd book of Maccabees that will inspire us to be brave like they were. But the most famous story is that of Mattathiah, who was a Kohen, a priest, and his sons. They abandoned Jerusalem when the temple was defiled, and they fled to the land of their hometown in Modin. But eventually, the generals also came with their loss to the land of Modin. And if you look in the 1st book of Maccabees, when he saw the sacrileges that were being committed in Judah and Jerusalem, Mattathiah said, "Woe is me! Why was I born to see the ruin of my people and the ruin of the holy city, and sit idle while it is given into the hands of enemies and the sanctuary into the hands of strangers?" When these army generals came to the city of Modin and they wanted to enforce these laws, Mattathiah, who was a priest, and his sons, they refused to comply. Instead, they took arms and they killed the king's officers. Knowing that this was going to get them into serious trouble, they fled to the mountains. And you can read in Maccabees, 1 Maccabees 2:27, the famous words that Mattathiah said when he called out to the people of Modin. And he said, "Everyone who is zealous for the Torah and who stands by the covenant, follow after me." And he and his sons fled to the mountains. But it wasn't long before all those who were zealous for the Torah also gathered and joined them. So they formed actually a small army. Mattathiah himself was very old and he died. So as you go through the account, you will find that Judah, or Yehuda, his son, is the one who took over. They were a small army and they were able to defeat the king's officers through a kind of guerrilla warfare. And because it was so difficult to know where Judah was going to appear and how he was going to defeat them, they actually called him Judah Maccabee, because Maccabee means hammer. So Yehuda became known forever as Yehuda the Maccabee, or Judah the hammer. Because of this trouble, the Seleucids actually sent a massive army to defeat this tiny army that was standing up against them. They sent thousands. This is the amazing miracle. They sent thousands of soldiers and elephants. The Greek army was the most powerful army in the world. And they were sure that this was going to be a quick battle, because this was a tiny army in the mountains that were defying them. But this is where the miracle took place. When he reached the ascent of Beth-horon, Judah went out to meet him with a few men. When they saw the army coming against them, they said to Judah, "How can we, few as we are, fight such a mighty host as this? Besides, we are weak today from fasting." But listen to Judah's response. He says, and this is what I want us to keep in mind when we talk about being a light in the darkness. He says, "It's easy for many to be overcome by a few. In the sight of heaven, there is no difference between deliverance by many or by few. For victory in war does not depend upon the size of the army, but on strength that comes from heaven. With great presumption and lawlessness, they have come against us to destroy us, our wives and children, and to despoil us. But we are fighting for our lives and our Torah laws. He himself will crush them before us, so do not be afraid of them." And in amazing victory, the Lord did a miracle. and this tiny army overthrew the great big Greek army. This was clearly a miracle from heaven. What they did is they went to Jerusalem, and Yehuda and his brother priests were very upset to see the condition of the temple. The altar was profaned, the gates were burned, and the holy courtyard was overgrown with weeds. So they tore their garments and cried out to heaven and sounded the shofar. They tore down the defiled altar, they built a new one, and on searching for the oil to relight the menorah, they found only 1 cruse of olive oil, which means it would only last a day. It takes 8 days to make this holy prescribed oil. They were uncertain of what to do, so they decided to observe the mitzvah of lighting the menorah as best they could. They fully expected it to go out that day, but even though they lit the candle, the menorah, miraculously, the oil lasted the whole 8 days until the next set of olive oil was made. And this was the celebration, the miracle of the oil that lasted 8 days. So this is a very quick account of what actually happened on the historical account of Hanukkah. And on the first day, we want to look at that to remind us of how small the army was and how massive the opposition was, but their faith in God, their bravery, and their dedication to God. So during Hanukkah, we're going to be looking at different aspects each night because there's so much to learn. But it's all to direct us into dedicating our life, our temple, unto God. When we realize that Yeshua, who is the light of the world, calls us to be the light of the world. And so many people at this time might be feeling like life is very difficult. Many people are rather distraught and losing hope with the way the darkness seems to be overcoming us, or overcoming the nations. And it seems like evil is coming up like we've never seen before. But this is an amazing time to remember the story of Hanukkah and the story of the Maccabees. This is our history. This is our history of time and time again, when the people of God, as small in number as they were, had true faith in God and believed that they were enough to bring the light to cut out the darkness. So if you and I are going through a time that seems very difficult, and it seems like the darkness is too big for us, or we can see the looming darkness coming ahead and we're wondering, what are we going to do? Do I have a voice? Is there anything I can do? Or is this just going to completely overtake me? How am I going to stand my ground? Am I actually going to make a difference in the world today? And this is a time to remember and go through this account of what it takes to bring out the light and cut off the darkness. I remember somebody once sharing with me, and this is what I wanted to keep in mind today. The difference between darkness and light is just one candle. You light one candle, and the darkness is defeated. You can see. So your life is very important. Your life is needed at this age and time, wherever you are in your homes or in your workplaces, in the city you live in. Each one of us is called to be a light in this dark world. This is our time now. We do not have to be afraid of the darkness that we see around us. We do not have to be afraid of how big and powerful it seems compared to us. They may be large in number and we may be small in number. But I want you to remember the story of these brave Maccabees who had true faith in God, that all it took was their dedication and God would do the rest. So with that, I would now like to help you learn how to light the Hanukkah candles. So during Hanukkah, we actually use something called a Hanukkah. If you notice, this is not like a normal menorah, which has 7 lamps. This has 9. So we have 8 lamps for the 8 nights of Hanukkah, which commemorate the 8 days that the oil lasted. And we have an extra candle, which is usually higher. Sometimes in your Hanukkahs, it's in the middle. Sometimes it's on the side. And it is with this light that we light the other candles. This light is called the servant candle or the shamash, and that represents Yeshua the Messiah. And on the first day of Hanukkah, we light one candle. On the second day of Hanukkah, we would put another candle over here, and we would light 2 candles. On the third day, we would put 3 candles and light them, which represents the third day. The rule is that we place the candles right to left. I'm facing the Hanukkah, right to left I place the candles, but I light the candles left to right. Don't worry about it. We will be with you every evening to show you exactly how to do it. So this is the shamash candle. And with this, after we light this candle, we will be saying some blessings. And then we will light the first light to commemorate the first day of Hanukkah. All in all, by the time you have finished all 8 nights, you will be using 44 candles. So you need a whole bunch of candles. You don't have to worry if you don't have an already designed Hanukkah. One of the fun things about Hanukkah is all the creative ways that you can make your own Hanukkah. And you can go online and see multiple ideas. That's one of the things as a synagogue that we did over the years. Every year was the fun with the children of making a very creative Hanukkah, and I've already got some pictures from some people of their homemade Hanukkahs. That's really what the beauty of Hanukkah is. And what we do every night is after the sun goes down and it's dark, then we light the candles. You can light your Hanukkah by a window or a doorway, or even just outside your door, maybe even up on your balcony. It's a public display. It's a public expression of our faith. And because we're celebrating the light and the true light, who is Yeshua the Messiah. After you light the candles, we sing some songs, which we will not teach you today, but we will teach you from tomorrow onwards. And we play a lot of games with the children, and one of the famous games is the game of the dreidel, and we will also teach you about that. And the best part, probably for some people for Hanukkah, is we get to eat lots of fried food. We eat food made dripping with oil to remember the oil. So you can eat latkes, which are fried potatoes, and another wonderful dish called sufganiyot. And you remember the oil, and we remember that you and I need to have the oil. So what we're going to do now is we are going to light the Hanukkah. And what I will be doing, and if you have a Hanukkah with you right now, you could join with me, or if you're going to do it later, what we will be doing is lighting the shamash candle first. We will be saying 3 blessings today. Usually there are only 2 blessings to say, but today being the first day, we also say the Shehikianu, which is a blessing that we do at the first day of Hanukkah. And then we will be lighting the first candle to represent the first night of Hanukkah. So you could join with us. We will be singing the blessing, and then I will read it in English for those of you to understand what it means, and then we will go to the next blessing. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to kindle the Chanukah light. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who performed miracles for our fathers in those days at this time. Usually we only say these two blessings, but we are also going to say the third blessing, which is the Shehikianu. The Shehikianu is a special blessing that we sing whenever we come to something new or something we're doing for the first time. So it's a wonderful way to thank God for this festival of Chanukah, which we're starting in this year, and so we will sing our thanksgiving to God. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has granted us life, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this occasion. Amen. After we light the first candle, we say another prayer. We are lighting these candles to commemorate the miracles, wonders, victories, and battles you performed for our fathers in those days. At this season, through your holy priests. For all 8 days of Hanukkah, these lights are sacred. We are not permitted to use them for ordinary light, but only to look at them in order to thank and praise your great name for your miracles, for your wonders, and for your salvations. Amen. So as we leave you tonight with a little bit of a taste of Chanukah, most importantly, why we as believers in Yeshua, if we've never known about Chanukah, or if you've never celebrated this wonderful festival of lights, it's a good time to begin returning to the roots of our faith, for we are not alone in this walk. You might feel like it's just you, there's no one in your family who's walking this walk, but you need to know that we have a long line of forefathers behind us who have stood from Abraham's time and stood for the faith and enabled us to reach this season today. And this is our inheritance. Hanukkah celebrates the light of the world, who is Yeshua. During the first day, as we look into first the historical account and the story of Hanukkah, one of the things that you can do tonight as you light your Hanukkah would be to discuss with your family or your friends. One question could be, what relevance does the Hanukkah story have with today's culture and what's going on in the world today? This is really important because we are all having to battle darkness with the light that is within us. The second question could be, what kind of battle are we facing today to maintain holiness in our life? And you could go through the story of Eliezer, Hannah and her sons, and Judith, and see how they maintained their personal temple before God that enabled them to maintain holiness in the dark time they were in. And the third question is, what kind of devotion to God and His Word do we see in these historical accounts? These could be good examples for us even in today's time. On the first day, you could meditate on Genesis chapter 1, verse 5, which talks about how in the beginning God said, "Let there be light." And you could meditate on that light, and you could go through the whole book of Genesis, the whole chapter, Genesis chapter 1. And during the Hanukkah season, if you have felt that darkness has overcome you, you've got into despair, hopelessness, and giving up on yourself or giving up on God, where you're feeling like you have no direction and you don't know where you're going, it's a good time to reignite our passion. Just like we have to take the light and put the light on, we have to put the candle on. It's good to go back into His Word. And especially what you can read is Psalms 119. And we can reignite our passion for God and His Torah. So it doesn't matter how dark everything seems around you or how dark everything seems inside of you. I really encourage you to take this time to pick up the scriptures, pick up the Bible, take some time alone, whether it's in the morning or it's in the night. Find some time during this season. Like I said, the difference between darkness and light is just one candle. Reignite our passion for the Creator of the universe. Reignite our passion for Yeshua, the Messiah, who brought us to this faith and to where we are today. We have also got 2 lovely songs for you, which we will put in the links below. Each night we want to share a nice Hanukkah song with you that you can play in your home with your kids. Remember, it's a time to sing songs, it's a time to play games, and it's a time to celebrate. One of the songs is actually for children, and it's a really nice song, but if you're like me, I find them fun too, and it's good to sing them with your kids. And stay tuned with us every night. We will bring you different teachings to help you learn more about the true meaning of Hanukkah, because it goes much, much deeper than just a historical account. So tomorrow, being Shabbat, we will be lighting the Hanukkah earlier, before we light the Shabbat candle. So only on Shabbat, we light the Hanukkah before sundown, because we don't light anything after the onset of Shabbat. Tomorrow, our session will come earlier, and then we will have a teaching on Hanukkah. So it's already Thursday evening, and what we say is we already say Shabbat Shalom, because tomorrow is Shabbat, so Shabbat Shalom to everyone. I really hope that this session has been helpful for you. I really encourage you to share this with others who, if you think they don't think that Hanukkah is for believers, if maybe they've never heard of it or they don't know how to celebrate it, I really encourage you to share this link with them so that everyone can get to have the light switched on, literally. Have the light penetrate the darkness of maybe ignorance or not even realizing that Hanukkah is in the Bible. Share with them the importance of Hanukkah and enjoy this in your home. Hanukkah is a festival. So leave aside all your worries. Don't worry about all the problems you see around you. Light up your Hanukkahs, eat nice fried food, sing lots of songs, and enjoy the Hanukkah season. Shabbat Shalom to you all.
I'll tell a tale, yeah, of Maccabees in Israel, yeah, when the Greeks tried to sail, yeah, but it was all to no avail, yeah, the war went on and on and on, until the mighty Greeks were gone, yeah.
I put my lockers in the air sometimes, saying just wanna celebrate for all 8 nights, singing light the candle. We say Alhamdulillah, oh yeah, for all 8 nights. Then we play dreidel by the candlelight. And I told you once, now I told you twice, about the miracle of the candlelight.
They took the field. Their rivals thought, are they for real? Those Maccabees, they never yield. They charged ahead with sword and shield. Yeah, the war went on